All right, what's going on YouTube? This is going to be our second iteration of some gameplay review, which I'm pretty excited about this one specifically because we use economy to really rein in a great game, honestly, and we do pick up the win here, which is pretty sweet. So without further ado, I guess let's start it up. All right, so you can see here that we're more or less on the bottom of the leaderboard here. We've got about 40 gold saved up, which is pretty good. That's 4 interest is pretty good. And we really don't have a good comp. You can see we've got a level 1 Blitzcrank, a level 1 Blitzcrank on the bench. We got a level 1 Darius, a singular level 1 Darius, obviously not very good. We're pretty close to, a level 2 Ash, but even then, we've got 4 units and none of them are really doing anything for us. But this is the stage of the game where you're really looking for your comp. So by the end of stage 2, beginning middle of stage 3, you should really have a more or less understanding of what you're trying to run. And if you don't, you better get to it quick because you might not have enough time. All right, so we're doing a little bit of re-rolling and buying here. We're kind of looking for something to run, right? Like we're thinking about brawlers, we're thinking about rangers. Like there's a couple of cool little options we can do. We see this Kennen and we're go, okay, well we have the Lysandre level 2. We see the Kennen, maybe we can find a brand in the future, and we find the brand right off the bat. So we're like, all right, there we go. Let's go Elementalist. So it's not just the Elementalist though. We decide that with this powerful early game that we've just stumbled upon, we're able to save a little bit of gold and use econ, like I said, to really solidify our win here. We actually get a pretty cool 1v1 scenario in the end with some Zephyrs. So that's really the beginning of this video, is really just showcasing the going, okay, we don't really know what we want to do. Oh, we see a cannon. Oh, we see a brand. All right, so let's just go Elementalist, right? So at that point, we're like, all right, we've got a pretty strong comp. We can start to save a little bit. So then at that point, like we just mentioned, it's really about saving and winning as many rounds as we can get without being in the danger zone, which is like 40 HP, something like that. So in this draft, we're not really too sure what we want. So I think in this scenario, we end up just going for the extra HP for the second Zephyr. You can see there we took a couple seconds to more or less get an idea of what everybody's running. We finish up the glacial, or the frozen heart, glacial shroud. I always call it glacial shroud. Yeah, we finish up the frozen heart here, which is pretty solid. And I honestly always recommend a Phantom Dancer on either your tank or your carry if someone's running assassins. I feel like everybody loves assassins right now, and Phantom Dancer is just a beautiful thing against them. So at this point in the game, we've got our 50 gold, and our goal from the rest of the point on is to just save and just spend down to 50, only leveling. So you can see what this is going to do for us in the near future, but you can see right there, we picked up a unit, we spent the rest of it to level, no rerolls. That's the very important thing here, is we really don't reroll with this strategy. We're just saving to 50 with a good comp, specifically an early game completion of an Elementalist buff. And then at that point, like we said, we're just spending our gold from anything excess of 50 down to 50 leveling. So we're not really re-rolling too often. So you can see that in the future here, it's really just about every round go down to 50. If you have 53 gold, don't re-roll, save it up. And that's really the strategy we use for the next couple of rounds into stage 4, 5. I don't think we get to stage 6. I could be wrong though. But really, it's just about saving, and you can see in the next few minutes how powerful this is really going to get. You can see we went from the bottom to the top, mostly because of the Elementalist comp, and that is allowing us to really save and put some pressure on our opponents who are still trying to finish their comp up. That's pretty good here. And again, you really only can do this if your comp is set in stone. It's solid, you're winning games, because if you're not winning games, it's probably better to use your gold to find something to help you win some games, because really once you're in that 40 and lower HP range, it's going to be pretty dangerous. That's you're getting into the 2 to 3 losses before you're out, right? So at this point, it's just really rinse and repeat. We're spending anything excess of 50 gold down to 50 using the experience. So you can see that we're level 7 right now, and we actually just sold right here. We're going to pick up Swain, which is going to, we see the Ionic Spark there. Yeah, everybody's pinging. I was looking for it. But yeah, we're going to pick up the Swain specifically to finish our second Zephyr, which you can see in just a moment. Right here. You can see that we finished our second Zephyr. Looks like we skipped a little bit here. So at this point, we've got realistically nothing too crazy aside from just a couple of elementalists and some dudes that really support it. But the important thing is that we're still above 50 gold and we're level 8 at the end of stage 4. So that's pretty powerful, and we're really still pretty solid, even though we've been saving. We're not really focusing on getting anything level 3. It's really just about trying to ride the momentum of the early game elementalist pickup. It's usually pretty hard to deal with early game unless they've got an absolutely absurd comp. So if you see elementalist early game, it's honestly an amazing pickup because of how realistically rare it is. You know, you need the epic, you need the green, you need the blue. There's even a legendary for it. So if you could see it, I recommend picking it up. But the focus here is using an early game comp, right? Using an early game powerhouse comp like Elementalist, if you could find it, to slingshot your strategy into the late game by riding off that momentum. So you can see that every round we're only spending our gold down to 50. That is the strategy here. We're looking for a couple of rerolls here. We see the Varus. I think the strategy here is like, oh, we could potentially get a level 3 Varus here, but realistically, like, I think in the later on stages of the game, we sell them off, understanding that it's probably not the best. You don't want to stretch yourself out too thin. You can see that we're trying to get a level 3 Ashe, a level 3 Vayne. You know, we're looking for the Varus at this point, and we're also trying to buff up our brand. We're kind of stretching ourselves thin. We're trying to do that on top of saving our gold and going for an econ strategy. So you can see here, it's pretty much just rinse and repeat on most of these rounds. It's really just about the overall strategy. So we find our second level brand here. We're still at above 50 gold, and we're looking for that level 9 here. And we're just riding off that momentum, riding the waves into the late game. And we're about to be top 4 here, really just off this early game Elementalist buff. And it's not just getting that early game strategy, it's understanding when, you know, you get that powerful comp synergy completed, you can sort of focus more on economy, because if you are still focusing on rerolling and trying to make your comp more powerful, you're really not going to do yourself any justice. It's just going to cause you to win slightly harder. It doesn't really do anything, especially in the long run, when somebody who's losing, you know, every game against you because you're focusing all of these additional benefits suddenly gets their synergy going and hasn't been focusing that early game rush, and has been doing econ, whereas you haven't, you're probably going to lose the late game, right? So in this scenario, we realize we've got the early game advantage. We don't need to rush it, and we really just try to ride that late game out, right? So at this scenario, I think we end up losing this one. We go, okay, he's got 2 tank items on his Darius as well as an Ionic Spark, which Ionic Spark is kind of a weird item. We're not really sure how good it is, at least I can't tell. So you see that he's got a Volibear. It looks like a level 2 Volibear with a Dragon's Claw and a Static Shiv. Not too dangerous, but his comp has sort of pushed ahead of our early game strategy a little bit, but we're really not too worried about it. We've got 50 gold. We're about to be level 9. We could even be level 9 if we wanted to right now. 30 gold. But I think we end up waiting for the shared draft, which is good. You know, losing a game or two, especially when you're at 55 HP in the late game, is not really that big of a deal. Even more so if it's a very close game, right? So it's pretty important to not freak out when you're losing, especially if you're ahead. You just calm yourself down, realize that, you know, you could take a couple of losses and keep saving your gold. So you can see here that I think there's a couple of options here. We see the Anivia, who's obviously a better option than majority of the Elementalists. Whilst all of them are very good, Anivia is just amazing. She slows attack speed down, she does a lot of damage, and all while being in a fairly decent sized AoE bubbles, so that's pretty good. So we've got our 4 rangers here, we've got our elementals. We end up selling the level 1 cannon, which is more or less holding us back, honestly. Like, cannon's doing us some work, but he's really just there to activate the elementalist buff until we put the Anivia in, and then we see our power level go even further up. And we're right now we're looking for a 3rd Zephyr. We have the options for a 3rd Zephyr, and this is really the most important stage of the game. So we've got 2 people left, and we have a 3rd Zephyr potential. So if you guys aren't familiar what Zephyr does, it simply bounces a unit up in the matching opposing square. So if you guys didn't know that, you can actually aim your Zephyrs. You'll see that here in just a few minutes. You can aim your Zephyrs and actually have some pretty cool counterplay. So it's fairly important which unit you equip your Zephyr to. So you can see here we're really deciding, and we end up going with the Brand, which I think is the best option, mostly because a lot of people like to stack their units up in a very similar way, and that allows us with Zephyr to counter it even easier. So we have this guy for their front line, we have this guy for their backline carry, and then usually they're going to put their AP carry, their caster, in this square or this square. Typically it's going to be this square because it's really one of the harder squares to get to. So upon doing so, putting the Zephyr in these 3 units, we actually swap this. Normally it's better to have the Zephyr here, but we do swap this because our Anivia is so squishy. We don't want her to just die instantly. And now Brand has Zephyr on him. He's a little bit tankier. He's level 2. He could survive a little bit more damage. It's really about maximizing damage here rather than getting that Zephyr counter. But you will see in the near future the Zephyr counter, or the Zephyr strategy where you're bouncing people up, is really the most important thing when you're running Zephyr. It's absolutely amazing, but it's super cool that you can aim it. So you can see here we're running against another person playing Elementalists. He's playing Yordle. So at this point we go, okay, we're the last 3 in the game. It's really about countering these 2 people. So we see Yordles, we see Glacial, we see Elementalist. Most importantly, see we Shojin's Lulu, which is pretty cool. Double Shojins. I think he's going to end up winning this one. The Gnar really does us injustice here, as well as his Brandol. But that's fine. You know, we've lost a couple games here. We're down to 34 HP, which is really a danger scenario. But the best part of the whole game is here. We are teetering on a level 9 with still over 50 gold. So this is like the creme de creme, where you're like, yeah, we can do everything we want. So something important here is we don't overcommit to the 70 gold here. You can see that we purchased to the 70 experience. We purchased to the 68, and this is, I would say, pretty important to recognize, as we are still looking for powered up units. We don't really want to spend any extra gold that we don't have to, especially now that we're in this late game countering scenario, right? So it's really about saving as much gold as possible. If we lose another bad round, we're still not out of the game. So it's really, you know, be patient and move forward on that continual slope upwards rather than sort of spike yourself up, because you'll just fall back down, right? So in this scenario, we're looking at somebody else's strategy, and we're debating on moving our Zephyrs, as we said before, to bounce a specific unit up. We decide against it because we are still in a free-for-all of 3 people. So, you know, we're going to be playing against people with different strategies. It's really better at that point to just kind of do what you're trying to do. And then once you're down to that 1v1, or if somebody's super far ahead, then you can look to Zephyr counter them. But it really is either the majority or just do whatever you can do, right? Like, better your own strategy. So we end up beating this guy, which is pretty cool. Which is something weird, is when you fight the spirit, you don't actually get the elemental golem. So this is pretty simple. We're really just, you know, rinse and repeating the dragon here. You know, split your units up, bring them back, and then this is where the fun really begins. Is the other guy's been knocked out, so it's the guy that we've been losing to and us. So it's pretty sweet here. So you're gonna see the late game here is gonna get pretty crazy. We're out of gold at this point. We did a bunch of rerolls here. You can see we're pretty close to a level 3 Varus. We've got our level 2 Kindred. But something that I'd like to mention is we're using multiple of the same units to sort of cash in on a buff that we've already got. So that's pretty sweet. We've been using, up until this point, multiple Rangers, like double Varus, double Vayne, double ash. You can see right here we're using 2 ash. So it's actually pretty neat. Both those ash are getting the glacial. They're both getting the ranger. They're getting the 4-stack ranger, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, so it's really neat to kind of duplicate units, especially when you're looking for the tier 3 version of that unit. In the meantime, you could just sort of power up your strategy to a small degree, but it really does do yourself justice. We have our Ionic Spark. This is really just because we're in danger zone. It's probably better to just use all of our items. If we were in control of this game completely, we'd be more apprehensive about equipping items willy-nilly. We've got our a random Karthus here to initiate the Phantom buff, which really does us quite a lot of work in these next few games. You can see that we're looking back and forth. We're trying to see what the strategy they're going to do is, where they're putting their units. We're really deciding where our units need to go. And you can see that these next few games are going to be really back and forth. Like, we both have the Elementalist buff. It looks like he has Glacial as well. He's running Sejuani, an absolutely amazing unit. You can see that our demons are actually draining the Sejuani's mana, super important. We take this game out, which is pretty good. And I have to sort of accommodate Zephyr for being really the late game winner of that specific round, right? So it's doing us an amazing amount of justice, sort of bouncing those 3 specific units, allowing us to get to the lower priority units. Usually you bounce the higher priority units. You could bounce like a low guy, but like you never want to bounce like this Kassadin, right? Or this Vhagar. Like those are low priority units. You want to bounce the Sejuani, the Brand, the Gnar. You could bounce Lulu. Lulu would be a great target. Lysandra, probably not a great target. Kennen, probably not a great target. You either want to bounce the front line to get to their back line, or you want to bounce their back line to deal with their front line without being nuked. So there's really a couple of ways to do it. Hitting like a level 1 Kennen or even a level 2 Kennen, it's not really necessary. You can see he's actually swapping his units as well, and we're both looking back and forth at each other, preparing for the last few rounds against each other with our Zephyrs, and I'm moving it. So a tip in this scenario is really to just do your own strategy, right? If both of you guys are moving back and forth, it's going to be near impossible. It's just going to be a flip of a coin whether or not you get their units in the Zephyr, the correct units. So if you could see that he's moving his Brand back and forth to prevent you from Zephyring, really it's not a good idea to try to move your unit back and forth and catch it. What you should do is change your entire strategy in terms of where your targets for the Zephyr are. So if he's moving his unit back and forth, instead of flipping that coin multiple times, just go, okay, I'm going to bounce your Gnar up. So you can move your Brand back and forth. I'm going to bounce your Gnar up and your Sejuani, and we're going to move to your Brand, who has no longer been knocked up, right? And we're going to kill him super quickly. So that's really what we do here in the end here. We lost that game. We got out Zephyr, the bouncing back and forth. We didn't hit the units we wanted to. So we sort of change up our entire strategy, and we allow ourselves sort of some flexibility with our units positioning, so we're not so forced like, oh, Zephyr's got to be here. Zephyr's got to be here. Whilst it is super important in some games to do that, with him bouncing back and forth trying to counter my Zephyr, the only real strategy is to just, like I said, just do your own thing, right? Like bounce up his Gnar instead. Like, you don't need to be attempting to play this game of countering him. You can see he's moved his Brand even an additional time. So what we do is we attempt to do it one more time, just to attempt, I guess, but we realize it's probably not the best idea. However, we do end up winning this game. Really, the Zephyr battle was super awesome to see. We ended up playing our own game there at the end. We didn't bounce up the Gnar or the Sejuani or anything like that. What we did, I think we bounced up we can actually take a peek at it. We actually bounced up the Lysandra, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so let's see here. This is the game. So you can see we're moving our units here to give us the Zephyrs. You can also see real quick, I'll just highlight this before we wrap the video up. Right here, you can see that there's a tornado. This will signify wherever your Zephyr is going to be, right? So if you pick up this unit with Zephyr, move him, and then put him down, it'll show you the little tornado here. So that's pretty sweet stuff, right? And it really, really allows you to do some cool stuff with your comp, especially if you're rushing Zephyrs. It's a real strategy, and I think a lot of people overlook it. So real quick, we're just going to look at the bounce up targets. So I think in this scenario, I look to bounce up. Yeah, so we bounced up the Lysandra. The Vhagar was an incorrect bounce. However, we do get the Golem, which absolutely changes our game completely, allowing us to crush the front line. So our Golem's being focused. His Golem, which is really his frontliner unit, is not being focused, which makes the whole round infinitely easier. You can see his Nar in the background isn't really doing anything. He attempted to focus the Lysandra. She froze herself. Then he's forced to move into the Lysandra to auto-attack Karthus, who's got armor on him. So it's really like the perfect situation. We knocked up the Golem, kind of a lucky situation. That's completely fine. We were really aiming for the Brand. And the Lysandra, which surprisingly actually came out to be a super good hit for the Zephyr. Because she freezes a unit from range and does AoE damage. She's absolutely insanity. Obviously maybe not as good as Anivia, but hitting the Lysandra definitely does justice. We have to credit it though to the Golem hit, right? So you can actually, what's cool is you can actually aim where the Golem's gonna be. So on the other side of that, you can also aim where the Zephyr is going to be, right? So you can hit their Golem when it comes out. So something cool is right here. You can see that guaranteed his Golem's going to be here or in one of these open spots. And you can see my Golem is going to be in one of these open spots. Normally the Lysandra would probably be back further to guarantee up in the front. But you could definitely guarantee a Zephyr hit if somebody were doing the funnel the Golem into the front strategy. You could bounce it up pretty much every time using the, just peek over, move, peek over, move. But if they see you doing that, they might just like open all of their elementals up. But they spawn adjacent to any open square on a elemental. So that's something that you should definitely keep an eye out for sure. But yeah, guys, that will be the end of the video. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump to the end so you can see the comp arena. There we go. So we've got Vayne, Ashe, Kindred, Varus. We've got the 4 Ranger buffs. We have 2 Varus. So what's cool is it's giving us the 4 Ranger buff with the double Varus. More specifically, it's giving us the 4 Ranger with the double Varus with the demons. So we're preventing people from ulting from range with a large chance with the 4 Ranger buff. It's giving us a crazy high chance to suck people's mana out, dealing damage to them, more importantly, preventing their ultimate. You can see we actually beat a guy who was doing an Elementalist buff as well. He went double demons. He was going to go Shapeshifters, it looks like, but he didn't end up getting his 3rd Shapeshifter. So overall, it looks like our comp is slightly more developed. It looks like we were both level 9. I couldn't tell, but really what I wanted to highlight in this game is economy, guys. Economy wins games. We won this game strictly because we were saving gold efficiently. We were spending gold efficiently. We didn't get overzealous or hasty when we lost a couple of rounds. We played it till the very end of the game. We did our strategy, and again, economy was really the MVP of this game. It allowed us to slowly but surely gain advantage on the back of a really good early game comp. So, till next time, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you later. Thank you very much for stopping by. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to check out my Twitter and Twitch at the Zelph. I stream daily at 3 p.m. Central Time. And don't forget to click subscribe and turn notifications on as well. Thank you very much.